Stay tuned now for Webster.
Good evening. In the studio tonight, the man who will proudly boast that he and his operatives in the Sea Shepherd Society have scuttled a couple of whaling ships in Reykjavik and smashed up a whale processing plant, and he thinks he's right and can do whatever the dickens he wants. But first, Paul Watson, of course. First, here's Steve with the rundown.
Kids and drugs. Is the combination inevitable, or can it be stopped? What can parents do? Bob Meehan has helped the children of the rich and famous in Hollywood, and he's in the studio with Webster. Nuclear disaster in Chernobyl. Tens of thousands of people may still be in danger from nuclear poisoning. What safeguards have the Soviets made now? Dr. Thomas Perry is just back from there, and he's coming up with Webster. Sabotage in Reykjavik. 2 whaling ships are scuttled under the direction of Vancouver's environmental pirate. And Paul Watson is up first with Webster.
Well, Paul Watson, we've been through a couple of your campaigns together on television. You sank a couple of whalers in Spain. You sank one in Portugal. You were fired on by the Faroese a couple of years back with machine guns. But now you proudly boast that in Reykjavik, you infiltrated the whaling industry and you deliberately scuttled 2 ships. Now, can you conceivably justify it in the name of common sense? Harmless people in Iceland who live by their fishing industry, and in you go. We scuttled 2 ships. We're terrific.
We successfully enforced International Whaling Commission regulations against this illegal whaling operation in Iceland. There is a moratorium on whaling, and Iceland is refusing to abide by it. They agreed to the moratorium in 1983. This year they have killed 117 fin whales, and they have done so in contravention of the law.
Did they tell the world they were going to do it?
They said they had no intention of abiding by the regulations. They applied for a scientific permit in June in Malmö, Sweden at the IWC meeting. They were denied that permit.
And now the IWC has publicly condemned them?
Yes, they have been condemned by the International Whaling
Commission. And did the
Commission.
IWC authorize you to carry out your terrorism against these mammal hunters?
The IWC does not have an enforcement body. For 6 years, the Sea Shepherd Society has operated as an unofficial enforcement body. We only use these kind of tactics against operations which are illegal.
One does not regard the Icelanders as people who are particularly careless with the world's resources. They fought the Brits for their cods. They say that half of the whales they catch are used for meat, and the other half are used for scientific research. That could be true.
They use no whales for scientific research. They do not have scientific permits, and they do not have scientists who are authorized to do legitimate research with these whales. But the thing is that it is a fact that it is in violation of international regulations. It is a criminal operation.
If it's a criminal operation, why does the world leave it to you? Surely the International Whaling Commission has got some mechanism by which they can take action against this horrible, nasty, law-breaking country.
Unfortunately, just like the United Nations, there is no powers of enforcement in international waters, and the IWC does not have powers of enforcement. The United States could have enforced the regulations by the imposition of the Packwood-Magnuson Amendment, which would have brought economic sanctions against Iceland and Norway this year. However, that was not imposed because for political reasons. Reagan chose to discriminate on the application of the law, and the reason he did so is because of that NATO base in Keflavik. So the NATO base was the whales were the price, their lives were sacrificed.
The price for the NATO base. Well,
yes.
That may have been a good balance overall. Maybe we need the base at Keflavik, but I don't want to get you off your guilt.
Guilt? I have no guilt.
You plead guilty, however, to masterminding this operation.
I plead responsibility for this. However, I don't feel guilty. I feel quite elated that we were able to go in there, get the job done, enforce the regulations, cripple the Icelandic whaling fleet, and at the same time we were true to our primary objective, and that is we do not cause any injury. We have never caused any injury.
By happenstance?
Not by happenstance at all.
Well, tell me
we could have taken all 4 vessels out. The only reason we did not do so is because there were watchmen on 2 of them. And although scuttling the vessels sinks the vessels slowly, we could not rule out the possibility of a heart attack. Therefore, we only took out 50% of the fleet.
Make it nice and simple. You left them the other half. You'll do that next year.
If we get an opportunity to do so.
Now, tell me how you planned the operation. I want to hear all about it. It happened on Saturday night. Did you give the word to do it on Saturday night?
The Sea Shepherd was in Reykjavik last year. We mapped out the area. We looked at this as a possibility. We gave a warning to the Icelanders that we would interfere if they chose
You did that last year in
Yes,
Reykjavik?
last year.
You went on television and said, we will interfere with your
Yes.
whaling operation
Yes, on
if you are illegal.
On Icelandic television. We said, if you violate the moratorium, we will interfere. This year, after the IWC meeting took place in Iceland, again said that they would go ahead with whaling. Our crew then went into Iceland in late August. They infiltrated the Icelandic
As
fishing.
tourists or
no,
whatever?
they infiltrated the Icelandic fishing
Well, how did
industry.
they do that?
They were able to gain employment on Icelandic fishing
They went to
vessels.
Iceland, landed there, looked for work on the ships, and got to work on the ships.
Yes.
How many infiltrators did you get
I
in
can't
there?
say how many there are right now.
Was it more than 6?
No. But
Less than 4?
no, I can't give any information
It was
on that.
less than 6 anyway.
It was less than 6. And
What nationality were these people?
I can't give that information, except that I will say that none of them were Canadian. They were from other
Why
countries.
didn't you do it yourself?
I can't even.
I mean, you're the leader.
I can't set foot in Iceland without being recognized now, so that would have been a problem. We would not have been able to do it. These crew members were able to become blend into the fishing community there. Therefore, they had access to the whaling vessels and to the plant without any suspicions being aroused.
Well, pretend I'm a reactionary, which I sometimes am. This is really the birth of terrorism in the name of the rights of mammals, because you have decided that the Icelanders shouldn't do this.
Terrorism is when you cause injury or death to innocent people. There are no innocent people involved in here. And
What do you mean there are no innocent people?
this is a criminal operation. It was an enforcement.
What, yours is a criminal operation?
We have broken Icelandic law in order to
Yes.
enforce international
So
regulations.
you are a criminal in the eyes of Icelandic law.
And our objective was a criminal operation in the eyes of international law. Nobody was
So we've
injured.
got two sets of criminals fighting each other. You destroying property as a criminal under Icelandic law, and you're saying that they, because they don't go along with the IWC, are criminals in international law.
And the one big difference is that they're taking the lives of endangered species, and we are not injuring any living thing. We have never, ever harmed a human being, and we have enforced the regulations, and we have saved the lives of these animals.
Mind you, I could draw another parallel with the French attack on the...
Yeah,
the Greenpeace ship.
that's an excellent example, because the French went in, not only did they destroy the Greenpeace ship, they killed somebody. That was not dismissed as an act of terrorism by this government. The Canadian government, the American government, the European governments did not utter a word of protest.
But you and
about
I
it.
know that that was an act of terrorism by the French
Yes.
against this
And Iceland,
peace movement.
Iceland, Canada, the United States continue to trade with the French. So therefore, terrorism, when it's done by your allies, is acceptable, even when there's a loss of human life. But when we take an action against a violent operation, an illegal operation like the whaling industry, I don't think we can be called terrorists.
Oh, I think you can be by those people
Well,
who don't
of course,
accept your position
people,
in international whaling.
there's some people, the
mean-
word terrorism is bandied about too freely these days. It's
You were
losing
only
its-
lucky you didn't kill somebody. There could have
No,
been
we were
somebody
not lucky. We were-
asleep on that ship and drowned.
No, actually, our crew members checked every cabin prior
They went
to
all
that.
through the cabin.
Yes, they did.
And then how did you smash up the whale processing plant? Was that an attack by night, or was that done?
That took place about 2 hours prior to the scuttling
Broke
of the
in.
vessels. Yes, they broke into it.
Sledgehammers.
They are authorized to do a maximum amount of damage to that equipment. To cost the whaling industry,
I love the way you say they were authorized to do the
Right.
You're sounding like a bureaucrat of the Sea Shepherd Society. You mean you told them to smash up the plant regardless?
we gave them instructions on what guidelines to follow. The first guideline was that they could not use explosives. The second, they could not use weapons. The third, they could not do anything that would endanger anybody's life.
And to get out of the Iceland as quickly as possible
Yes.
on the next flight. Which they did.
Yes.
Tell me, did you use some of the money you've raised from a sympathetic public for this, quote, terrorist operation?
Yeah, we used donations to finance these operations, but most importantly, this campaign was financed by the Icelanders themselves because our people were in the employ of the Icelandic fishing industry.
In other words, they saved their wages to destroy half the industry.
That's right.
Well, I don't know if you're right or wrong. I really don't know. I think it's incredible paranoid arrogance by you and the likes of you.
Well, I think it's about time. We fought for years and years to try and save these animals. We're in danger of losing them. And I think that, people have gone to war.
Just a minute, what kind of whales do you say they were fishing illegally?
Fin whales.
Fin whales?
Fin whales, the second largest of the 10 great whales.
I thought they fished for pilot whales.
No, pilot whales are killed off the Faroe Islands.
And they are not in danger of extinction.
No, they're not. But
And you
fin
don't
whales
mind
are.
if they're hunted?
Of course we do. We're opposed to the killing of whales.
You know there's a big new seal kill going to happen now because of the
And we'll-
explosion of the seal population.
There is no explosion of the seal population.
I'm told there is.
Well, there's a lot of difference of opinion on that.
And so you'll be back out on the East Coast next year if there's a seal kill.
Damn right.
Someday you might finish up in jail as a very nice martyr.
Well, that's the chance you have to take.
Fair enough. You have it, Paul Watson. When are you going to get the other half of the Icelandic seal industry?
As soon as we possibly can.
Are you going back there if they ask you to go back to face your accusers in Iceland?
I would welcome the opportunity for them to lay charges against us to further publicize the fact that they're involved
But you
in
won't go
illegal
back.
activities. If I have to.
Oh, without being extradited, you'd go back?
No, but I would like to take advantage of an extradition hearing. I'm not going to go back without that.
No, you're not going to go back at all unless you're stupid.
No, I'm quite prepared to defend our actions.
They may seize the Sea Shepherd in England.
They
now.
may do that too.
Then you have to get more money from the public.
Well, we may have to do that too.
Fair enough, Paul. Your questions to Paul Watson of the Sea Shepherd Society. You want a whaling fleet sunk? Get Paul to do it after the break. Please avoid the niceties, just one segment of calls. And when I put you on there, go straight at Watson, for him or against him, but no good evening, how are you so-and-so and such and such. Straight at him. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like just to read out of the dictionary the definition of terrorism, and it's the use of violence, intimidation, etc., to gain an end. And that is terrorism, what they did in Iceland. And while I support the saving of mammals and marine life...
You don't like terrorism. First call goes against you.
Well, there's some people who are serious about saving whales and others who aren't.
You're deadly serious.
Yes.
Go ahead to Paul Watson.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to say I've always been disgusted with the slaughter of whales, although I think that the northern people, the Eskimos, I think it's part of their heritage. What do you feel about that, Mr. Watson?
We've never interfered with an indigenous whale hunt. We may disagree with it morally, but we understand the practicality of it, and we have never taken any issue
Good
with
for
it.
you, because we all noticed how Greenpeace had to get down on its knees and apologize after ruining the lifestyle of the Inuit somewhere up in the north. Go ahead from Penticton.
Yes, I'd like to know Mr. Watson's affiliation with Greenpeace, if any.
Absolutely no affiliation with Greenpeace.
Not nowadays.
I have not been with the Greenpeace Foundation since 1977.
Big falling out then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead from Abbotsford.
Hello.
Yeah.
The thing that disturbs me the most about this whole episode is that, you know, as much as many of us would like to see Separate Society as a far-left group, I realize that there are others at the even farther side of this thing that are going to see this whole episode as justification for further and more violent actions, and it really disturbs me, and I think that Mr. Watson has done very little consideration of this matter, and...
Very good point. He's saying
Well, I'm
to you
offended to be called a left-wing group. We're not a left-wing group.
No, but he's saying that you're inclined to give groups so inclined to take the law into their own hand under the vision of, you know...
When there is no enforcement
true
body to do
virginity.
that. When there is nobody else there to enforce the law, somebody has got to do it. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
It's kind of like policemen deciding to knock off all those convicted criminals, those criminals they can't send to jail, isn't it?
Not at all. They should be apprehended, but we are not knocking off any whalers. We're just stopping their operations.
Go ahead, please.
How many countries are involved currently in illegal whaling? And the second question I want to ask is there a total ban on whaling? And also I'd like to add that what he did, I totally support.
You totally support what he did, but you want to know how many countries are now involved in illegal whaling.
There is an absolute moratorium on whaling now. Any whaling operation taking place today is illegal. The countries that are involved are Japan, the Soviet Union, South Korea, Norway, and Iceland.
Oh, fair enough. Go ahead, please.
Well, I think Paul Watson is a terrorist. He ought to be stopped. And if there's no laws in this country, they ought to make laws to stop people like him.
Fair enough. Some people don't like you, Paul.
Well, the people who helped the Jewish people in Germany were also breaking German laws, and they were accused of the same kind of terrorist activities against the state.
You're pushing that a bit.
No, we're not.
You're not comparing this to the gas chambers of Hitler's
No,
Germany.
I'm saying that people who broke German law to uphold liberty were in fact branded as criminals.
Go ahead, please. Hello.
Yes.
That's you.
What right does Paul Watson have to take the living away from some of these other men when he's out asking for donations from the general public?
We don't survive on donations from the general public, and
What do you survive on if you don't survive in donations?
all
from
of
the
our
general
crew
public?
members pay their own way, and we have no staff people, we have no people on salary at all.
How much you got in the bank?
Right now, the Sea Shepherd Society, $3,000.
We have enough to sail the ships in Britain now, isn't it?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
From Salmon Arm.
Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate that Paul Watson on one hell of a job. And I'll be glad to donate money to him.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. Much obliged.
Okay.
From 100 Mile House. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was wondering if there was any particular reason why Paul Watson did not want to use explosives at all?
Because of the possibility of causing injury to people in the vicinity. Explosives are unpredictable.
So I just was thinking that they might do a better job than a sledgehammer. Also, I was wish to make a comment. For years, me and some people who I know were just jokingly mentioning about taking a submarine, actually, and World War II one, and going out into international waters and threatening Russian ships with it. But I guess this is a much better and more equitable way to go about things. And I commend you for doing this job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
See the kind of people you attempt to encourage? Somebody wants to take a submarine and go out and sink some Russian ships? Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Watson, I'd like to just say that I'm very pleased with what you're doing, only just be careful not to hurt anybody in these actions that you're taking.
That is our primary concern, that we do not hurt anybody. And I can't stress enough that the Sea Shepherd Society has never caused an injury, and in our 9 years of operation, we've never suffered an injury.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, I'd like to just say that I congratulate Paul on what he did. I think he did a great job.
Thank you.
Turning into a veritable fan club, much to my annoyance. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, is it only terrorism, Paul, if you bomb or hurt somebody?
I believe so. If you're enforcing international regulations against a criminal operation, I believe that's legitimate. We have never taken these kind of actions against legitimate whaling operations. Last year we were in Iceland. We told them that we had no intention of interfering with them, but if they went against the moratorium, we would interfere. And it was an illegal operation. We had no other alternative.
Are you going to name the people who did it?
Yes, in fact, I'm hoping that...
Now?
Not now, no.
We'd like to get on the wire services.
Now, you believe that you can go to Iceland and do what you please and not be punished?
Well, if Iceland believes that they can go out and violate international law and kill off the whales and not be punished, then it's the same thing. Somebody has got to make a stand here.
Sure enough.
Vice versa, Paul. I don't believe, you know...
Don't believe what?
I don't believe that, you know, what he's done is right.
Okay, fair enough. And Paul is quite prepared, if by chance he gets nicked by the Icelandic government, to serve his time in jail, aren't you?
Certainly.
A couple of years, anyway.
I think it'd be a worthwhile sacrifice.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Watson.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to compliment you on your efforts, and I think you've done a great job, and especially on this last move that no one was hurt. I hope to God that nobody gets hurt in your future excursions, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Go ahead from Trail.
Yes, I'd like to know if Mr. Watson plans on being God when he retires, or is he ever going to get a job?
Geez, it's a nice ambition, but unfortunately I don't qualify.
Well, you would tend to get a bit smug with your successes recently, wouldn't you?
I'm very happy with our successes.
Go ahead from Vancouver Island.
I'd just like to congratulate Mr. Watson on a job well done. Thank you very much.
Quite an astonishing response. You must be converting more people than I would have thought. Go ahead, please. That's you.
Hello.
That's you.
Yes, I applaud your affirmative action, but what I wonder is if something had gone wrong and someone had got hurt, would you continue that kind of action?
Well, no, that's an iffy question. It's perfectly obvious how he will answer that. Nobody will ever be hurt in one of the carefully planned operations of the Sea Shepherd Society. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's what you would say?
Yes.
But you don't know what might happen.
We looked over every foreseeable possibility, and in fact, we only took out 2 of the ships because there was a very small chance of causing an injury to the watchmen on the other 2.
Much of the ship's worth?
About $2 million apiece.
$4 million?
Plus about $1 million worth of damage to the processing plant.
Oh, that's great stuff.
That's about 2 years' profit for the Icelandic whaling industry.
Yeah, and if the people of Iceland suffer because of this, it's no
people
skin
of
off
Iceland,
your nose.
the people of Iceland are not going to suffer. They enjoy one of the highest standards of living in the world, and there is nobody in Iceland who is dependent upon whaling for a livelihood.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have 2 questions. First of all, statement. I am a Canadian citizen. I cannot express my disgust with your guest.
Well,
I think he is totally wrong. My first question is, who designated him to become the official Canadian terrorist? The second question is, who made him God?
I don't understand this reference to being God. What
Well,
I've been doing has got nothing to do
Paul,
with godly attributes.
but when you appear as the Sea Shepherd Society, and we all know your predilection for flamboyant moves, even if you fell on your face in the wolves up in the north a little bit.
Well, I disagree with you there.
No, we can disagree. But when you announce that you will continue, as I'm sure you will, this form of particular destruction of other people's assets because you don't like
You
what
mean
they're
illegal,
doing.
illegal property?
Illegal actions, not illegal property.
The operations
They're entitled
were,
to have the ships.
The operations were illegal.
But people are inclined to look at you and say,
Well,
that man thinks he is God.
Well, in fact, if you say they're entitled to have the ships, then the U.S. Narcotics Department should be returning the ships that are involved in drug running. There are people whose livelihoods are dependent upon drug running, and that could be defended under the same argument.
You just got to watch
The
you don't
fact is,
become paranoid about this whole thing.
Iceland is breaking the law. They're in contempt of international law. Somebody has got to uphold that law, and we have been doing that.
And Paul and the Sea Shepherd Society have chosen themselves as a method for doing it. And on
Yes.
the calls tonight, it would seem a preponderance of people who got through supported his actions. I don't happen to, but that's purely beside the point. My thanks to you, Paul.
Thank you.
We'll watch your endeavors and look for the names of the guys who did this deed as soon as you release them. And I'll be back after the break. It's a long while since I've tackled this particular subject, probably because over the years I've found that people with drug cures generally can't live up to their advanced billing. This is Bob Meehan. He founded the Palmer Drug Abuse Program in Houston. He operated for a while a sober live-in center ranch in San Diego, which was said to be the largest and most successful drug rehab program that ever existed. Now, before you speak, Bob has got all the necessary qualifications. He's not a real hard man, but he was a druggie, a lush, a thief, a con, used drugs for 10 years, and spent a comparatively minor time in the penitentiary, 3 years. Where did you get the secret of drug rehabilitation? I searched my brains, and from Synanon up and down through Escalade and all the rest of them, I've never come across one that I really believed in.
It came from, first, my own life. I've been completely clean of all chemicals for 15 years. So that helps me in one way to say, well, it's working for me. If it works for me, it could work for others. And what seems like to be the key to the whole thing is very simple. It's not looking for videotapes of your early toilet training, and it's not sitting down and spending 4 nights a week in church. It has to do with finding a way to be happier without getting high than for getting high.
You're not a freaky organization.
No,
eh?
no.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
You know
yeah,
what I'm getting at?
Not at all.
Because I don't like these ones where you get saved and cured overnight.
And the next night you fall.
But I should explain that some desperate parents in British Columbia have actually brought Bob up here to help them with their problem. And we're not talking about heroin or needle junkies. We're talking about marijuana. Is that right?
That's correct.
But I thought the conventional wisdom today is that everybody smokes a joint of marijuana. That should really be decriminalized and legalized. What do you think?
I believe that, I know that marijuana is the most insidious chemical in society today, bar none. There's no doubt in my mind.
Make a case on that.
It is proven. The Navy now has a way of testing that they can find marijuana in the system 30 days after it's smoked, at least. We have young people today that are getting high once or twice a month. It stays in the system. And basically what we have is young people going to school at ages 11, 12, 13 who are under foreign management 365 days a year.
Under foreign management, you mean under the influence of the marijuana in the brain, even if it's only used infrequently a couple of times a month.
And even if the effect is only slight. See, I'm not saying that these people are growing horns, that they're causing terrible problems. They're just slightly different than they would be if they didn't have the drug.
Well, take the extreme case, like one of the parents here was telling me about his son, you know, who's really gone off the rails. The old story from being a B student, a good B student, to being a dropout and quite apparently incapable of rehabilitation. Right. Now, does marijuana do that to kids?
Yes. Now, the biggest problem we have with marijuana by itself is that in most cases, there is such, due to the public, due to the media, everybody has said, gee, there's nothing wrong with this drug. Parents are now coming to me saying, my son just smokes marijuana. See, he's just smoking marijuana. That's like saying, you know, you're
he
a little
only
bit...
drinks Diet Sprite.
Right, that's how they're looking at it, you know. And
is that wrong?
It's totally wrong. And we've got kids walking around under foreign management, unformed psyches, putting THC, that's the active ingredient, into their brain, sitting in school. Nobody's aware of what's happening.
But there is a personality change in due course.
Serious personality change.
All right, I'm the ordinary parent, will say, and my 15-year-old's behaving weirdly, dropping out this and that, the next thing. They won't even tell me he's smoking pot.
Right.
I'm wondering if he's on the snorting stuff or whatever. What do I do?
First thing you do is you search his room.
What, interfere?
We're talking about somebody who's committing suicide on the installment plan, and you're going to be concerned about interfering. You search his room. See, if you can't play the lawyer legal game, but because of the fact of marijuana itself is such an, I'd like to call it, rather than hallucinogenic, how about illusionogenic?
Yeah,
creates an illusion, all right, that there's no way you're going to corner him. You must find some evidence somewhere, somehow on him. You search the clothes that he
And
doesn't
having
wear.
found it, what do you do? If you don't have the any kind of decent treatment center you can go to, do you throw him out of the house?
No, you do not. No, you do not. And you don't beat him up. If you don't have any kind of decent program, first of all, you know, your chances of your child at that age doing drugs is about equal to that of him getting chicken pox. That's how it is today. So you should be looking at programs, checking out programs, seeing what works. You don't talk to the people that run them because they're all going to tell you they're wonderful. You talk to parents that are in it. You talk to the kids. See if you can find some bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kids that are making it. You find yourself a decent place, and then when you catch him, you don't run him to the program. You find somebody he trusts. Man down the street who's the father of another kid. Maybe your brother who's his uncle. And you say, would you talk to him, see what's going on? Maybe he's smoking a little dope. Maybe he can talk to him and say, look, son, you got to quit this. Do you think you can keep from doing this? The problem's not too bad. Your brother will tell you more about how your kid is than you will.
Well, you've got the old, I almost said the old hackneyed 12-step program in a book called Beyond the Yellow Brick Road, haven't you?
It's the only thing that works.
That's the alcoholics program.
You got it. It's the only thing. If you said anybody who has managed to recover from anything, from a bad divorce to whatever, and they really have recovered and come out of it and are leading a good life, you'll find out that they did what the 12 steps have to offer in some shape or form. Okay, in other words, they will at some point had to say, boy, this really is my fault. They will then have had to find good people to hang around. They will have had to look at themselves somehow. They will have had to get rid of the
How long were you running
guilt.
this thing in San Diego?
I ran it myself for 3 years.
3 years. Now, did you just take marijuana cases? Or
Oh, no, we took everything.
Matter of fact, you had just remembered. Gossip, I've got to give you it. Carol Burnett's daughter.
Right.
What was she addicted to?
Cocaine, marijuana.
How did she beat it?
The 12 steps. We
On
took,
live-in supervision.
for a short period of time. For about 30 days, she went into a residential program and then began going to meetings with young people who were no longer getting high.
But that would be expensive living in for 30 days in your place when you owned it in San Diego.
Yeah, well, that expensive relative, that's a $5,000 program. Hospitals will run you $15,000 to $20,000.
In the States?
In the States.
Different here. They generally put you in a psychiatric ward of some kind here, I should imagine.
Which to me is like the snake pit.
Well, we are a little more advanced than you in some places. Now, what are you going to do for these parents? First of all, they're going to have a meeting of parents who want to meet Meehan Sunday, November the 16th at 7:30, North Lonsdale United Church. And there are 2 phone numbers up there, which I'll repeat at the end of the next segment. Yeah.
What do we do?
Does the success of your program depend on your personality?
No. But it takes personalities of some kind to get people to be involved. If you can't make being straight attractive, nobody's going to be straight. You've got, you know, what did Cheech and Chong do?
Bounce off each other.
Right, and they said the yellow brick road is you get high. You want to have girls, you want to have friends, get loaded.
How's Carol Burnett's kid doing now?
Wonderful. She's a star on Fame. She's sober 4.5 years.
Your question's to Bob, isn't it? Bob Meehan from San Diego, up to help the parents form an organization called Freeway. And there's no fee from the organization to Bob. He came up on his own hook. After the break. One question, Bob. If a group of children are all exposed to marijuana, why will some take it and some not? Some experiment and some not.
Those who will not experiment with chemicals have a level of self-esteem, a trust and a belief system in their family that tells them, if I do this, these people are going to be upset with me. I love them, I have a good home, a sanctuary. I'm not going to do it because they tell me not to.
You're telling me happy kids won't take it?
No. Kids with self-esteem. Kids with self-esteem aren't necessarily happy.
Good point. Go ahead, please.
Hi, could you be more specific on what you mean by marijuana as being suicide?
Yes. I say it is committing suicide on the installment plan. By using marijuana, you slowly begin to remove your motivation. The way you think is being controlled by another substance, and the person you are without it dies. You are no longer him, and the longer you do it, the less chance you have of ever getting back to being him. So maybe you don't die physically. Who gives a damn? You're dying emotionally. You're dying spiritually. To me, that's suicide.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very well said, as a matter of fact. Go ahead, please.
That's me, Mr. Webster?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Meehan, one of the things I think that I have known about, because I worked in prison with addicts at one time, and one of the things that was maintained from the addicts themselves was, in discussions with them about the drugs, was that they said, I always maintain that if you're using marijuana, eventually you could get into heavier drugs and so forth. And the actual prisoners said, yes, that was a fact, that they
Okay, what do you think of that particular theory?
Yes, yeah, for most of them that is very true. The problem I have that I keep saying to people, who cares if you move on or not? The chemical itself is devastating, but it does change your thinking. Since it changes your thinking, you're under foreign management, then you're more likely to snort a rail, you're more likely to try other drugs. If you had never, very few people that I've ever worked with, and I'm talking thousands, said, gee, I think today I'll go out and shoot some heroin. You know, they start with other drugs. It's a game to say, well, didn't everybody start with milk? Hey, we don't have time for that. I think we know what we're talking about.
Go ahead, please.
Hello there. I'm just glad to hear your friend up here from from the States. I'm involved with the 12-step program myself, and it's great. You know, I've had a few slips here and there, but the 12 steps is the only way to save my life. And
was that 12 steps as an ex-con or 12 steps as an ex-druggie?
both. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and right on, brother. It's the only way to go. In Vancouver, we have various things happening here, but Narcotics Anonymous NA is alive and well in BC, and hope to see you at a meeting. Thanks a lot.
Good. Thank you very much.
Can I make one remark? Also coming in is CA. Cocaine Anonymous is beginning to have meetings here. It's an incredibly enthusiastic, sober group of people. Please check them out and give your expertise, brother. Please.
Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello.
That's you.
I'd like to ask him a question. In fact, you're talking about kids smoking marijuana. I've been in places where I've seen adults smoking marijuana with kids in the immediate vicinity, and I think it's a monkey see, monkey do.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack.
That's me.
Yes, I was into the Alcoholics Anonymous program. I was wondering how long Bob's program lasts.
Because we work with young people, the idea is that those that have addictive personalities will not stay with the Palmer Drug Abuse Program, the Freeway Program. They will move on to, if they have that addictive personality, the Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous program. I'm not reinventing the wheel and saying we're going to form another recovery program. So I expect them to go on to those programs if they have that addictive personality. If not, they can clean themselves up, pat them on the butt, and they can go about and live their lives.
Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello?
That's you, ma'am.
Hi. I'd just like to say that I started doing drugs when I was about 13, and I'm 22 now, and I've been addicted to anything from marijuana to pills to coke, you name it. And I'd say that the 12 steps is the only way to go. It cleaned me up.
I love you.
I'm doing a lot better now. I can think straight. I don't have the crazy personalities. And
how about your friends? Do you have new friends?
oh yeah, I got engaged about a year ago, and if it
Right.
wasn't for him, I think I'd probably still be, down the road. I just wish that there was somebody there that would have tapped me on the shoulder a lot sooner.
Right. Well, we're trying to do that, darling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well.
Bye. Best of luck.
Love you.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I've been, I've taken the odd, I'd say for the last 10 years, I've probably come home in the evening, smoked a joint after work. I've tried cocaine. I've tried other drugs. I do them once in a while. I've attained a good position in business. I'm responsible. I have a good relationship with someone of the opposite sex. I seem to lead a fairly level life. What do you say to a guy like me that's been doing this?
How old are you?
I'm 35.
And you've been getting high since you were?
Oh, about 22, 23.
Okay, so, and you've been smoking dope at least once or twice a week?
That's correct, yeah.
Well, see, the problem is, brother, you need to let go of it for a little while and find out if the person you say you are is really you or under foreign management. Your life is being set up by and controlled by and revolves around the use of mind-altering chemicals. I would say to you, I'm not saying that you see your life destroyed. Tomorrow, the guy you buy that dope from or get a little toot from might get busted himself and turn around and roll over on you. Everything's going to go right down the drain. If you're willing to play that game, go for it. You're an adult. I can't tell you what to do. Okay?
I don't have any strong feeling of fear about this, though. I don't feel that I'm doing something so completely irresponsible to myself that it won't repair.
There's only one way you're going to find out what you're doing, and that's to just leave it alone for 30 days. If you don't like what you find, I guarantee you double back all your misery right on you, man.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob, I'm in AA, and I want to commend you for what you're doing. I just want to know what your success rate is out of your deal down there.
Dig this. You're not going to believe this. From the Palmer Drug Abuse Program, which is a 12-step program for young people who move into AA, those that have addictive personalities, the best we can figure, it's such a big program, maybe 30,000 families have been dealt with. About 20,000 of them have been successful, meaning they're moved either into Alcoholics Anonymous or managed to get their lives together.
Right on.
So we're running, it's like a 60, and you know all the programs I've done have run around a 60% success rate. It's incredible.
Oh, that's good. That's excellent. As far as I'm concerned.
I think we're getting them younger, man, better shot.
You regard it as success if you dry them out from the drug and get them into the AA program.
Right on.
As long as they stay in the AA program,
they'll make it.
Success. Good boy, thanks. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello?
That's you, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to know if it is correct that if a person uses marijuana for a long period of time, the marijuana steps in producing a chemical that normally the brain produces, and if you use it on a longer term and then stop, your body is not capable to step in and produce that chemical again, and then you'll have to take medication for it, which has side effects.
Gotcha. No, that isn't true. That has to do with the opiate drugs, and it has to do with the endorphins. It is the pain-killing drugs within your own head that stop working. The glands stop working. Excuse me. With marijuana, that doesn't happen. The biggest problem with marijuana, after you stop after a long period of time, is that returning to your natural way of thinking becomes an extremely difficult task. And it's hard to get people to stop using because you have to use their ability to think to give them logic. And if you can't reach the logic with them, how do you get them away from it? So the biggest problem is getting their logic back.
Last call from Prince George.
Hello?
That's you, ma'am.
Thank you. Why do doctors give marijuana to cancer patients prior to chemotherapy? And I only have to say that if the parents want their children to stop smoking dope, I would suggest that the adults quit drinking.
First question. They do that because so far it seems to be one of the few drugs they've been able to find that stops the nausea from the treatments for the cancer patients.
And that's justifiable if you compare it to morphine, Demerol,
Honest
and
to God,
else.
it's better than everything else they gave.
Sure.
And as far as her question about, their drinking, I get real stuck there because I know people. I had lunch today with some people who had one glass of wine, which is responsible drinking. They didn't use it to get high. They didn't use it to change themselves. They used it because they enjoyed the wine. There's no way they sit down and have a joint because you like the taste of it. So there's a world of difference between drinking. If someone drinks and uses the chemical dependently and in order to change themselves, yes, they should stop that. And it would be very difficult to tell your child don't smoke if they're using a drug.
Bob, you've been a delight. Put up that notice of that meeting again, will you, Pat, please? Freeway, 7:30 p.m., Sunday, November 16, North Lonsdale United Church. There are the numbers, 298-4516. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Back after the break. Dr. R. Thomas Perry is one of the people from Physicians for Social Responsibility, and he's just back from Russia. But the first thing I want to talk about before we talk about peace is, you did talk to some of the Russian physicians treating those who suffered from the nuclear disaster at Chernobyl.
Yes, actually we had a talk from the physician in hospital number 6 in Moscow, where 123 of the worst injured patients from Chernobyl were taken. And he gave us a lot of details about the injuries they had, what treatments worked, what treatments didn't work. You know, and the most interesting thing answer we got from him was, what are you going to do to prevent further accidents of this sort? And he was very frank and said that the entire accident was due to sloppy work, violation of regulations, and that the people who were responsible for it were fired, and that a number of people in other nuclear power plants in the Soviet Union had been fired, and they're going to clean up their act, and apparently they're doing the same thing, making the same things that are being done in Hanford.
There was something quite, yes, Hanford, of course, is a problem for us here, but there was something quite encouraging, and I saw a piece on television the other night about the incredible cooperation there was between American medical scientists and the Russians on supplying the information about the transplanting of bone marrow.
That's right. Robert Gale is a prominent American physician who's an expert in bone marrow transplantations, and he went there and actually helped them with the bone marrow transplantations, and I think it's a very good example of the international character that physicians should have, helping each other out, that one should be concerned with the health of people everywhere.
But now let's get to the real function of the Physicians for Social Responsibility. What kind of delegation was it you took to Russia this time, and what were you really there for?
All right, we had a delegation of 10 prominent physicians from across Canada, all the way from Victoria to St. John, New Brunswick. We had 2 excellent medical school deans. 6 of us were our university professors. 2 were family practitioners. And the reasons for going were, first of all, to try to build more friendly relationships between the Soviet Union and Canada, and particularly between the physicians of the 2 countries, and to exchange experiences with them in our work to try to prevent nuclear war and get on with multilateral disarmament, to find out what they were doing.
Well, much of the discussion must have encompassed the rather weird performances in Reykjavik.
It certainly did. In fact, when people ask me, what were you doing there, I tell them the real reason is I was trying to undo the harm that Ronald Reagan did at Reykjavik. And the interesting thing is we arrived in the Soviet Union 5 days after the conference in Reykjavik, and all of the Russians, without exception, that we met were absolutely stunned that their offer was turned down. They felt that this was far and away the most generous, imaginative offer leading to nuclear disarmament that anybody's ever made, and they couldn't believe.
As I recall the Russian offer, and it shows you how little interest one takes in detail, it was a proposal from Gorbachev to eliminate all strategic nuclear weapons over a 10-year period.
That's right, to cut them in half immediately within 5 years, and to eliminate all nuclear weapons, not only to cut strategic weapons in half within 5 years, and to eliminate all nuclear weapons, strategic, tactical, etc., all of them within 10 years. And in addition, to remove all Soviet intermediate missiles from Europe and American intermediate missiles from Europe, and to allow on-site verification in both countries to make sure that this took place.
But are you taking the Russian line as something which was genuinely and honestly meant, with verification on the ground, when the Americans, and certainly Reagan, are most unwilling to take any assurances from Gorbachev that the proposal meant anything at all?
Absolutely, and in fact, at the present time, and since July, there have been American seismic monitoring stations around Semipalatinsk, the nuclear test site, with American technicians there. The United States Geological Survey took the initiative to get them in there, so there is, in fact, American verification in the Soviet Union at the present time. It's not propaganda, it's not theory, it's a fact. So I think that the Soviet Union and the people there were dead serious about it.
What went wrong at Reykjavik? Because it seemed in the first flush that they were close together in agreeing to this ban for 10 years, eliminating much of the weapons in 10 years.
Right.
What went wrong?
What went wrong was that the Soviet Union said, we will do all of this if you will hold off on Star Wars. In other words, on any testing of Star Wars in space or any deployment of weapons in space for a 10-year period. And the Americans weren't willing to do that. And we found in talking to people in the Soviet Union, they are desperately afraid of Star Wars because they feel that it is not for defense at all. And they say, indeed, what need is there for defense if there are not going to be any nuclear weapons 10 years from now? They think that it's designed for offensive purposes to try to get the United States back into the position they were in the late 1940s and 50s where they had military superiority.
Because Reagan seemed definitely confused when he was responding to the Russian proposition, did he not?
Well, I think that you know, he was probably surprised that it was so good, and maybe he agreed to these things until it came to the sticking point of the Star Wars. The thing that interested all of us, we were, you know, wondering, are the Russians going to be very angry about this? Are they going to be discouraged?
Right.
Are they going to say, to hell with Gorbachev's leadership, now we're going to go back to the hardliners? And to my pleasure, that's not the situation at all. They were very disappointed, very surprised, but their attitude is, we've got to keep trying, we've got to keep doing the same thing. Someday the Americans will come to their senses.
Well, what do they think of Canadians if they know enough about Canadians to realize that while our government does not officially cooperate with SDI, we are willing to let our industries cooperate with SDI for the sake of the economic spin-offs, I suppose.
Clearly they don't like it. However, their attitude towards Canadians is quite different from Americans, because at least they know that we're not really a military power and trying to make trouble.
But we're a very important strategic power because of the use of our territories for testing, for instance, the cruise missiles.
That's right. Well, I'm sure that they obviously hoped that we physicians would come back and that we would put pressure on our government to urge the United States to cut out the Star Wars thing, to stick by the anti-ballistic missile treaty, to stop the testing of the cruise missiles, to urge Washington to respond with a
Let me
nuclear
ask you,
test ban.
do we have international testing agreements now and testing in the atmosphere? That's stopped.
Yes, we do. That stopped in 1963, so there's none of that. The only testing is underground.
Underground testing.
That's right. And you see, if we stopped all underground testing, this would be the single most important step that could be taken to stop the threat of nuclear war. So the Soviet Union has not tested any nuclear weapons since the beginning of August.
Do they look better than we, the West, looks in international eyes today? Do people in Europe believe Gorbachev? Because we in North America have all been so brainwashed to think that everything a Russian leader says is a lie.
I can't honestly tell you what people in Europe are thinking, but I certainly know that many more Canadians are looking with approval on the moves that the Soviet Union is making than are Americans. The public opinion polls show this. And I would hope that people in the NATO countries in Europe who had a chance to have all nuclear missiles removed are disappointed and will push for this to happen.
One question. The Physicians for Social Responsibility, what kind of reception do you get? What kind of degree of acceptability do you have? Or are you regarded, if you forgive me, as a kind of a group who are going to agree anyway on almost anything about nuclear disarmament?
All right, let me answer it this way. In the first place, our names changed. We're not Physicians for Social Responsibility anymore. We're Canadian Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War.
Oh, sorry.
And that's not your fault. A lot of our members are still stumbling in saying it.
How many are there of you?
How many are there of us? There are approximately 3,000 of us in Canada.
Pretty good.
And I think that our reputation is excellent, and in part because IPPNW, International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, of which we're a branch, won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think that we're recognized as very responsible people who are...
Of all political shades.
That's right. From you know, lots of conservatives and liberals and NDPers of all shades. That we're really out to try to...
When's your next trip?
When's my next trip?
When are they coming here?
I'm sure they'll be back here in a couple of years. I'll tell you when they'll be here for sure. The 8th Congress of IPPNW takes place in Montreal, May 1988. There will be a lot of Russian physicians coming. Some of them will come here later, and I'll bring one to your program.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas Perry, IPPNW Canadian Division. That's the best I can do. I'll be back after the break.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'm going to teach you how to vote with the machine. You're going to meet Pierre Bertman in his Vimy book. You're going to meet Marjorie Nichols and Bob Krieger on a book they've done on the Bennett regime in British Columbia. Enjoyable program. I do guarantee money back if not happy at 5 p.m. precisely.